Brown Scholars Program, as many of you know, develops students in leadership and civic engagement. And that's why this evening is appropriate for that group too. The Institute's initiatives are student and community centered. The mission of the Institute is to enhance the Bellarmine student experience and to reach out to the community at large. It is with that in mind that we invited Roger here this evening to Bellarmine. So he's been here all week for the past 2 days as a fellow in the Institute and also to deliver the Constitution Day talk. Several years ago, Congress passed a law that requires colleges and universities to honor the Constitution on September the 17th, or the nearest date going forward into that weekend. The Constitution was signed on September 17th of 1781. It's a way to honor that celebrated time. Our speaker spent the past 2 days on campus participating in several classes, meeting with students, and sharing his thoughts on many important issues. Tonight he will talk about this important topic, the fallout from the events of 9/11. This week, coincidentally, is the 10th anniversary of that fateful day. Mr. Newman is a professor of ethics in the graduate program of the School of Communication at Columbia University. He's been an author of many major articles on a variety of topics. In addition, he is an accomplished book author. His biography of Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black earned Mr. Newman recognition as a finalist for a Pulitzer Prize. He has given more than 200 lectures across the country at universities, so we really should look forward to his insights into this topic. So without further ado, here is Roger Newman in his talk, Civil Liberties, Surveillance, and Terrorism. At the end of his talk, Mr. Newman has agreed to take questions from the audience, so feel free to pelt him with whatever you choose. So without further ado, Roger, it's yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here. I probably had more fun going to classes than I might even have giving this talk. Nothing to take away from the subject, but interacting with students in 5, 6 classes has been just a lot of fun. I've given this talk the almost generic subtitle of Civil Liberties, Surveillance, and Terrorism, because that pretty much covers the subject over the last 10 years. Last October, Yasser Afifi, a 20-year-old community college student in Santa Clara, California, and an American citizen by birth, took his car in for an oil change. When he was up on the lift, he noticed a wire sticking out behind the right rear wheel, running between 2 black rectangular objects. He had the mechanic remove them and posted pictures of them online later that day. A reader suggested that they were the same device, a global positioning system, GPS receiver, sold exclusively to law enforcement. It reveals a car's location at all times. 2 days later, FBI agents arrived at Afifi's apartment to retrieve the device. He would not give it to them. After they left, he saw a man and a woman looking into his car. He decided it was time to go for a drive. 2 unmarked police SUVs followed and turned on their flashers. Afifi pulled over. An agent started questioning him about the GPS device. Afifi once again would not give it to him. The agent threatened to bring charges since the device was federal property, but refused to show Afifi the warrant he said he had. When Afifi asked for the agent's card and said his lawyer would contact him, the agent started yelling, asking whether Afifi was having money troubles or had been to Yemen or any place overseas for any type of training. Afifi agreed after a while to return the device. Then a female agent congratulated him on his new job and on his taste in restaurants. Her comments suggested that Afifi had been wiretapped for several months, even before a federal appeals court in California ruled that law enforcement could secretly place tracking devices on cars without a warrant, and even if the car is parked in a private driveway. The agents had never obtained a warrant for Afifi's car. He was the son of an Islamic American community leader who had been the head of a Santa Clara mosque. His father had moved the family to Egypt in 2003 and died there 2 years ago. Afifi returned to the U.S. in 2008 to go to school, but goes back to Egypt yearly to visit his brothers who live with an aunt. His parents are divorced. He works as a sales manager at a computer store and occasionally travels to the Middle East for his job. He's not politically active at all, but his background and activities put him on a federal watch list. "Don't worry, you're boring," one of the agents told him as they left and shook his hand. A few months later, Afifi brought suit against the FBI. If the first casualty of war is truth, civil liberties are second. Panic and fear move the terms of discourse in one direction. Legislation enacted when people are convulsed by emotion, outrage and anger, and thirsting for revenge is almost by definition a recipe for disaster. 1 month after 9/11, Congress passed the USA Patriot Act. It can reach anything that breathes or moves in this country. Let me mention just 2 of its provisions. A government agent can secretly search, seize, or copy your hard drive, say, without giving any reason or notice. The government can also compel disclosure of the credit, business, and travel records of anyone who has had any contact with the target of an investigation, someone who lived next door to, worked or went to school with, or was just seen in the company of that person. How reminiscent it is of Kafka's The Trial. Joseph K. was arrested when he awoke one morning. The more he struggles to find out what he did wrong, the more trapped he becomes. After all, says Kafka's narrator, K. lived in a state governed by law. There was universal peace. All statutes were in force. That was what happened, Congress still has not declared war, but the federal government has resembled the always vengeful bureaucracy that crushed Joseph K. That was what happened during the McCarthy era. Almost anything committed in the name of anti-communism was excused, as we set up blacklists, used loyalty oaths, found guilt by association, and put people under suspicion, not for what they did, but for their identity. The focus then was on political beliefs instead of on legally admissible evidence. Now it is on national origin and perhaps religion. In 1978, Congress passed the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, making it easier to wiretap suspected espionage activities by a foreign power, which included foreign terrorist organizations. The law established a secret court to pass on wiretap requests. In all that time, it has denied only 6 of 30,000 requests by any administration. But after 9/11, the Bush administration ignored the court and wiretapped phone calls coming into the country, supposedly only by people with a terrorist connection. And the National Security Agency, NSA, collected the records of all calls, all text messages, and all emails. This revelation in the New York Times in 2005 changed everything. The Bush administration investigated how the Times had obtained this information, but the apparent goal of an indictment under the espionage laws of the paper, its reporters, and executives never materialized. My students, Future reporters have asked me if they will be going to jail. And indeed, some news organizations now supply reporters with the names of bail bondsmen. The phrase we often hear in other contexts, "This call may be monitored," has taken on a new meaning. NSA operators without warrants have listened in on the domestic calls of thousands of American citizens, even a member of Congress, using data mining and on-the-spot computer sifting to figure out which calls seem suspicious. Our government has ignored the fast-track provisions FISA built in. One judge on the court held emergency hearings in his living room at 3 a.m., and while mowing his lawn on a Saturday, 4 carloads of agents arrived with 7 applications. His wife had to go upstairs since she lacked security clearance, but his dog stayed by his side. The Attorney General could give verbal approval for a tap, and then within 7 days it went to the FISA court. But that legal requirement was totally ignored as the NSA eavesdropped on delegates to the UN Security Council in violation of several treaties to which the US is a signatory. And during one 18-month period in 2004 and 2005, it supplied the names of 10,000 American citizens to government agencies.